This is my truck. It's a Ford F-150. Here in Texas, it's a standard daily driver. For the rest of the world, it probably looks like a suburban tank. But regardless of its size, it represents the fanciest vehicle I've ever owned. It's loaded with every tech feature Ford offered as of 2021. I've paid it off, title's in my name. They even mailed it to me, so it's all mine. Except, Ford keeps pushing updates while it sits in my driveway. Most of these, I assume, are improvements. But this last one informed me that some features I've been using up until now are going to require a subscription if I want to keep using them. So I own the hardware. Ford controls what I can do with it. Modern vehicles are better because of this connection. Safer, smarter, certainly more capable. I see the updates land. What I don't always see is the control quietly leaving me until I reach for it and it's gone. That dynamic, owning the hardware while someone else controls what it does, it's playing out right now inside organizations that believe they've solved for sovereignty. And most of them have no idea. Hello, I am Robb Boyd. Here's the question that tells you whether your organization actually controls its communications infrastructure or just thinks it does. If you lose internet access, what stops working? If you hesitated, this is for you. If your answer is everything, then you don't have a system. You've leased a service that happens to live on your property. To understand why that question cuts so deep, you need to know about a layer that most organizations completely overlook. There are 3 layers in any video infrastructure. The data plane is where media flows, your video, your audio, screen shares. The control plane is the intelligence, routing, encryption, bandwidth management. The first 2 layers get all the attention when organizations talk about going on premises. They're the exciting parts. This third one, the management plane, doesn't make the pitch deck. It's orchestration, user provisioning, policy enforcement, device configuration, monitoring. Nobody puts it on the procurement spec, but it's the layer that determines whether you're allowed to make a call at all. And it doesn't show up in the architecture diagram until something goes wrong. Now, the name of this video is the control plane paradox. But here's the truth. The paradox doesn't actually live, of course, in the control plane. It lives in the layer above it, the management plane. The word control is doing double duty here. It means the technical layer, yes, but more importantly, it means your control, the ability to actually run your own infrastructure. That's what's at stake. This is where the paradox lives. You can have fully on-premises hardware with video traffic that never leaves your building and a management plane that's quietly authenticating against a cloud service outside your perimeter. Everything works perfectly because you're connected. This gap doesn't announce itself. It hides in plain sight, sometimes for years. We see this surface constantly in tabletop exercises. Someone finally asks the question, what happens if we lose external connectivity for 72 hours? And a room full of people who've been nodding confidently for 3 years suddenly get very quiet. The video never left the building. The hardware is all on site, but the layer that controls what the system does, it's been phoning home the whole time. That's the control plane paradox. You can own the infrastructure, host the hardware, keep all your data local, and still not control the layer that makes it work. Now you know what you're looking for? Let me give you the map. Sovereignty has become a marketing word. Every vendor claims it. Every solution is sovereign capable. I asked Giles Adams, CEO of VQ Communications, to help me cut through it.
There are other vendors that will talk the talk, but when it comes to getting into this type of environment, delivering high volume services for customers, right the way up to, if you could call it the sort of pyramid of paranoia, if you go further and further up a particular environment, it has to be resilient. It has to just work all the time and every time.
The Sovereignty Ascension Pyramid maps 5 levels of operational independence and shows you exactly where you stand. We'll start at the bottom with the biggest tier. This is level 1, cloud. It's also where most people and organizations find themselves today. It's your off-the-shelf offerings from Zoom, Teams, WebEx, others. Everything is running in the cloud, which makes it convenient to use and easy to scale. Most of the organizations operating at this level, they're getting exactly what they need. It is the right answer for them. If you're watching this, you already know that, and it's not for you. That's not a problem. Level 2, protected cloud. The pitch sounds like this. We built a data center in your country, and we're going to keep all your data in it. Or maybe your data only travels on certified, compliant links, maybe government-specific cloud regions. It's all a bit more optically secure and controlled than a straight-up cloud, but the fundamental dependency you have on that provider still remains. This is where you may decide that the only way to get the control that you need is to buy and move all the equipment required in-house, which would land you at level 3, hybrid control. This one is interesting because the implications are not immediately obvious to everyone. Your hardware is on-prem, your video traffic stays local, but your management plane requires outside connectivity. This is what we've talked about in the opening and with my truck. You own the infrastructure, but someone else controls the layer that makes it work. Hybrid control is a viable model, but only if the risk ownership is transparent. The hardware is in your building, but if the management plane lives elsewhere, so does your sovereignty. When you're navigating this space, you have to look past the sovereignty theater. It's not always obvious with new terms being coined all the time. If you're getting pitched hybrid sovereignty, ask who actually controls the hybrid. A platform that is data sovereignty compliant might keep your video in country, but if it's still phoning home for updates and access control, you've just exported your authority. Sure, your data is a citizen, but your boss is an expat. Even air-gapped capable often just means the system can survive a temporary outage. That's a survival mode, not a lifestyle. This is sovereignty as stagecraft. The illusion works as long as the audience stays in their seats. But the moment you try to walk backstage and pull a lever yourself, the set collapses. My point is, don't buy a ticket to a level 3 performance if you're paying for level 4 autonomy. The jump to level 4 is about cutting the cord. Full control means the management layer lives with you, not the vendor. You decide when to open the door for updates, and you're the one who slams it shut. And if level 4 isn't far enough, level 5, air-gapped. Not capable, just air-gapped. The peak of the pyramid. Total isolation, 0 external dependencies. Most vendors will announce this, far fewer can actually deliver it. It is hard to maintain and even harder to monetize. But if you're protecting classified networks or critical infrastructure, difficult, well, that's the price of true sovereignty. The line between levels 3 and 4 looks like the others. But as you now know, it's actually a big, red, important line. And there's just one question that can help you cut through the hype and tell you if you're above the line or below it. If you lose internet access, what stops working? If the answer is anything other than nothing, you aren't sovereign. You're just a tenant on someone else's land, hoping they don't change the locks. Now, I want to show you what this looks like when it hits in the real world, because for thousands of organizations running Cisco infrastructure, the abstract became urgent, fast.
When people are looking at the communications and deciding how secure they want them, when you look at the ultimate definition of that, we're talking about delivering services in an air-gapped environment. Okay. So that could be a government that wants to protect its nation's secrets. It could be a banking and finance organization that's potentially having conversations that could move the market. And our platform, our software, complements the great platform that Cisco has in Cisco Meeting Server to allow people to build, configure, manage, and run those sorts of services at significant scale.
One government defense agency spent years building exactly what that looks like in practice. Cisco Meeting Server, deployed across a classified facility. That's over 200 collaboration devices, all on premises, all sovereign. The hardware was theirs. The management was theirs. No external dependency by design. And it worked exactly as intended. Then Cisco TMS reached end of life. TMS, Cisco's telepresence management suite, was the management piece holding all of it together. Scheduling, user provisioning, device configuration, operator tools. The layer that made the infrastructure operationally useful, not just technically present. When Cisco announced end of life, the agency faced a problem that went well beyond a software upgrade. Cisco's intended path forward is WebEx Control Hub, and for most organizations, it's genuinely the right one. It's excellent, modern, well-designed, cloud managed from the ground up. For the vast majority of Cisco deployments, Control Hub is the upgrade. For a level 5 air-gapped environment, though, it's a category mismatch. Cloud management in an air gap doesn't just compromise level 5, it eliminates it. Using Control Hub would have moved them to level 3, bypassing level 4 entirely, and that wasn't acceptable. The solution that filled the gap didn't appear overnight, and it wasn't built in response to this agency's crisis. VQ Conference Manager has served as the primary management interface for the Econo platform, now called Cisco Meeting Server, since its inception over a decade ago. When Cisco announced TMS end of life, VQ launched its Device Management and Automation module, DMA, in direct response. The DMA module was built specifically to absorb the device configuration and address book functions TMS had handled, positioning VQ as the on-premises successor for Cisco's sovereign infrastructure customers.
I was customer zero for Conference Manager. I had a requirement, a real one, within the bank. And knowing Mike and Giles and what they were doing for the platform, I went to them and said, can you build this with the tech you've got? And they did.
Well, back to our government defense agency. When they evaluated VQ, they weren't just looking at features. They were assessing whether this was a platform worth committing to long term. VQ's track record with other large government agencies facing identical requirements mattered. The roadmap mattered. This had to be a proven path, not an experiment, and it was. The result, a multi-year Cisco renewal and a 20% expansion of their Cisco footprint. They came in at level 5, they stayed at level 5. You already know the framework: data plane, control plane, management plane. So let's talk about who fills those roles and why the combination matters. Cisco built world-class data and control plane infrastructure. Cisco Meeting Server handles media processing and call intelligence, hardware-accelerated encryption, DoD-approved products list certification, proven scale from hundreds of users to over 200,000. CUCM handles calling. Expressway handles secure external access. This is the foundation sovereign organizations build on, and it's the right one. What Cisco Stack doesn't include today is a sovereign capable software management plane. TMS filled that role for years. When it reached end of life and the path forward became WebEx Control Hub, the sovereign option quietly disappeared from Cisco's lineup. For organizations at level 3, that's fine. Control Hub is excellent. For organizations that need level 4 or 5, it left a real gap. Cisco has since moved to wrap services and support around sovereign deployments, and that's meaningful. But a services engagement requires Cisco involvement to operate. What fills the software layer is a different question entirely. But that's the gap VQ Conference Manager fills, not as a layer sitting on top of Cisco and not as a replacement for it, but as an architectural complement alongside it. As you now know, VQ's roots go back to Econo Manager, the architecture that became the foundation of WebEx Teams Spaces. That's not a vendor relationship. That's a decade of working at the same architectural level on the same platform. Cisco provides the data and control planes. VQ provides the management plane. All three run on your infrastructure under your control. Standard Cisco deployment with Control Hub puts the management plane in the cloud. That's level 3. With VQ, all 3 planes run on premises. That's level 4. Let Cisco do what Cisco does best. Keep sovereign control over the management plane, the layer that makes it all useful. That's not a compromise. That's good architecture.
People are going to ask, Cisco's a US company. Why should a European defense agency trust it? Because origin doesn't determine control. You're deploying it into your own environment, running it yourself, managing it yourself. No external body, government, vendor, anyone can interfere with what you've built because you're not connected to them.
It's actually quite complicated delivering services in an air-gapped environment. All of those reliances that people are familiar with in a typical IT deployment, where you access, for example, licensing permissions through a cloud-based service, just don't exist in an air-gapped environment. So there's quite a lot of complexity, and that's why it's quite a niche environment in terms of the special engineers that work in this space. And it's why we've got this great relationship with Cisco.
That niche environment Giles described, it's a lot less niche than it used to be. Change Healthcare showed us in 2024 what happens when centralized infrastructure fails. Ransomware took out their systems, and for weeks, pharmacies couldn't process prescriptions and providers couldn't submit claims. 15 billion transactions a year flowing through infrastructure that had become a single point of failure.
One of the WebEx data centers went down in the Middle East recently. The customer had already got Cisco CMS, they'd already got VQ Conference Manager, both of which were deployed, but they weren't using them. They'd kept them as a backup while they run on the cloud. When the outage hit, they called us and said, we traded control for convenience. We learned the lesson the hard way.
There's a new pressure on top of all of this. AI has collapsed the window between a disclosed vulnerability and a working exploit. The decision cycle bad actors use to turn a discovered flaw into a deployed weapon used to take weeks. Now it takes hours. When a machine can write the exploit script the moment a vulnerability is announced, human speed patching, it's no longer a defense, it's a liability. Organizations at level 3 and below are exposed to this cycle. When your management plane is cloud connected, your response window is tied to someone else's patch schedule. Level 4 and above means you decide when the door opens and when it stays shut.
We're seeing a lot of customers moving back from cloud, and the driver for that is control. The Cloud Act gives US governments certain rights over data that's held by US-based providers. And that's a problem for some organizations, European defense agencies, ministries of finance. That's really just not acceptable to them. They need to host it, they need to own it, and they need to manage it for themselves. Owning your own destiny isn't just attractive anymore. For some organizations, it's really the only option.
Owning your destiny, that's the underlying driver. But the conversation has already shifted. It's no longer why sovereignty. The question is, how do we get there? The goal is no longer just security, it's resilience. If you don't own the infrastructure, you don't own your response time. Cloud providers optimize for convenience and global scale, and that's genuinely the right answer for most organizations. But if you're in defense, intelligence, critical infrastructure, or highly regulated finance, management plane sovereignty isn't a preference, it's a requirement. The easier your infrastructure is to manage, the less of it you probably control. Cloud management is easy because somebody else is doing it for you. Sovereign management means taking responsibility for that orchestration layer yourself. And when you need to operate during a crisis, that's exactly the layer that has to hold. The question was never whether on-premises is right. It's whether you're at the level that you think you are. Most organizations that believe they're at level 4 are actually at level 3, not because they made a bad decision, but because nobody asked the question clearly enough during procurement. Hardware on-premises doesn't equal management plane sovereignty. The spec said on-premises deployment. Nobody asked where the brain lives. Ask it now about every system that you depend on. If you lose internet access, what stops working? That answer is going to tell you where you actually stand. The proof of concept isn't hypothetical. That defense agency from earlier, they built it right. They held it right. And when TMS end of life threatened to unwind it, they had a path that kept them at level 5. That path exists because Cisco and VQ built it together. Your organization doesn't have to discover the gap during a crisis. That's the whole point of the question. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Robb Boyd. Links to learn more about VQ Conference Manager are below, and wherever you are in evaluating your own infrastructure, start there. If you lose internet access, what stops working? That answer will tell you everything.